With all the craziness that's been going on, you would think you'd have some time to breathe, but your mind is always questioning what is out there. It is though a mountain is moving in the night, but I have to get a better look. I turn to get closer, and it doesn't take too long to see what is breaking the horizon. It is the top of one of those enormous insects. Slowly, it's making its way south. I guess it was migrating to a warmer climate since it didn't seem to care about the amount of wildlife that it was scaring up as it slowly lumbered along. I needed to get a better look, so I kept banking as I got closer, just in case. This thing had to be 7 or 8 stories high, with its mass covering a small lake as it slowly moved. The outer shell had all sorts of plants growing on it. If it hadn't been moving, I'm sure it would have been missed altogether. Great, I thought. A giant mimic from a scary game, as I looked for a little while longer. Soon, I was heading back for my standard patrol when I saw a movement head towards the farm. Getting low, I analyzed the movements. I wasn't sure what I was looking at for a while, at least until I saw the tails. The back and forth movement of a tail moving like a fish, staying just above the ground to keep from dragging and slowing them down. Driving in, I was able to get ahead of them and land rather hard to alert them of my presence. They stopped about 20 feet from me and began to stand up on their hind legs. At first, they looked confused, and then they seemed to smile, or at least what passes for a smile, anyway. 3 lizard females stood looking at me as though they had seen their long lost relative. It was a good thing I was still wearing my bug armor because one of them quickly said, "It's after us!" I listened very close to the night air and I didn't hear anything. Then I asked, "What is after you?" "The thing," she said. "That bug raccoon looking thing." I cocked my head to one side because I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. I told them that I didn't see anything and that if it was there, it was probably scared off by that big bug moving. They were still worried and didn't let their guard down for a single solitary second. That is until I told them that their friends were still alive. They didn't believe me at first, but as soon as I offered to walk them to the new house the others were living in, they got excited. A little too much so, as more than once they tried to latch onto me. It got so bad that I got down on all my fours and told them, "Keep up," as I took off through the forest. It was well past midnight by the time I got them to the new house. One of the lizard females ran and tried to get to the door, but I held my hand up to hold her back. That is when I realized that they must have eaten some humans since I saw them last. Her chest was um, filled out a little more. With my hand there, she almost took offense until I called out for her friends. I could see a lantern being lit inside and movement until the front door opened. The humans called out to see who it was. I called back to them before showing myself, and then told them I had a surprise. That's when the 3 walked into view. Everyone was so happy that they didn't seem to notice me. Just like the snake woman, I didn't notice until she slithered by me. Damn, that woman is creepy. I said my goodbyes and found an area where I could take off. I had to continue my night patrol after all. I did feel good seeing them go inside, realizing that their friends were safe again. This made me hurry back on my patrol, but not before I made a stop. Landing near the porch, I waved over the other night guard and told him what had happened. He was a little shocked at the giant bug, but relaxed when I mentioned that the group was getting back together. Being guys, he did joke that maybe we should have stuck around and kept them warm on such a cold night. I would have grinned if I could, but I settled for a light swat on the arm and a little chuckle. It would be a very quiet night after that. For weeks, it was very quiet at night, so much so that I found myself landing to talk to the night guard more and more often. Flying is nice, but flying the same patterns over and over again can get a little boring. I didn't have any music to listen to, just the wind and my thoughts. And like the man says, you can spend too much time alone. And he was right. During the day, I found myself constantly helping with chores and conversing with everyone I could. It only took a few weeks before the conversation got lighter and lighter. Without anything heavy to talk about, rumors and gossip ran the conversations. The only thing I could add was what I saw on night patrol, which really wasn't much. That all changed around late September, I think, when we heard one of the ladies screaming from the henhouse. She had gone out to collect some eggs and was now making enough noise to signal the neighbors 2 miles away. We all came running, most of us armed, and those that could used four-wheel drive, i.e., got on all fours to get to her a lot faster. When we saw her, she was just yelling for us while pointing out to the fields. I expected to see a horde of bugs, but instead I saw something that made me pause. A bunch of people and creatures were waving us down. A bit shocked, I stood up and spread my wings a bit. This was not to threaten, but instead it was to let them know that this territory was claimed already. Most of the women took the children inside, while the men and two of the boys walked towards this new group. As we walked, I could hear safeties begin to click off, and I had to remind them to relax, guys, since they did not seem hostile walking across the field. When we reached the fence, I used my size to jump over the 5.5 foot tall fence, while the others had to either go over or through it. We could see that the humans were armed, but the creatures, they weren't. At least, not with firearms, anyway. A few carried makeshift swords or machetes. Hell, one carried a homemade pike. When we got about 10 feet apart, both groups simply stopped walking. The oldest looking human male looked at me and simply said, "Howdy." I returned his greeting and he asked me if I was in charge, and I told him, "We don't have a leader, but if one had to be chosen, I would probably guess it's me." He smiled at this and took a couple steps forward, sticking out his hand. I stepped forward too and grasped his, and I suddenly remembered how small human hands were compared to mine. He introduced himself and, of course, his crew. He said that they were staying at a farm about 12 miles from ours, and they were looking to stock up for the winter. They were very surprised to find out that the farm here was still intact, and more so, to find it active. I was a bit concerned that they would start to demand food or something, but they all looked well fed to me. Not wanting to sit and bullshit, one of the men asked if there was any further business here. "Well, simply put, looks like we're neighbors now." He paused again to motion with his hands. "You see, this ain't the only place that is working right now. On the other side of us, 5 miles, there's another farm that is making it by a bit, at least." He motions to the creatures next to him. "Their home is in that direction." Turning around, "And a group has laid claim to that old riverside farm in that direction." I jumped in. "I know them. They're friends of ours." This made the man smile as he kept going about how people had starting to come together. The best part was when he said, "It didn't matter if it was human or monster, we all just got through it. We hear how the city folks went after each other like wildcats on a fresh kill, but out here we stick together." Everyone in his group started shaking their heads in agreement. I saw a bit of movement in the high grass behind the group. I loudly said, "On that note, girls." Silently, the three females stood up, all close enough to be in striking distance of the closest human or creature to them. After a few mild curses from the other group, the girls moved around them and joined them, getting right next to me. The leader of the other group smiled and laughed, more out of discomfort from being surprised than anything else, and realized our point had been made that we are not the only type of group to be fucked with. Our conversation moved to the picnic table in the shade, and some of the ladies were able to bring water and some lemon to us. This seemed to shock some of the other group, but they were in the south after all, or at least close to the southern border. When my two dolls came out and started handing out a small lunch, I could see that their fair forms had caught the attention of several of the other group. I kept this under wraps until one of the younger male creatures insisted on just accepting the meal, grabbed her wrist, and tried to pull her down onto his lap. With this, I jumped to my feet and had just about climbed over the table when he let her go. She stumbled a little before I jumped over and caught her. Everyone was reaching for their weapons at this point. She immediately grabbed onto me as I tried my best not to rip this kid's brains out of his ass. The leader of the other group got between us and was trying to calm me down as the young canine looking creature was getting to his feet. Their leader then turned to this young creature and proceeded to paste a good one right across his face, knocking him back to the ground. This was right before he started cursing out at the young creature for doing something so completely stupid. Tensions were high enough as it is, and negotiations could be broken due to something like that. Their leader then turned to my doll, the one that had been grabbed, tipped his hat, and apologized for the behavior of his son. He must have been a John Wayne fan because he said, "My apologies, man. Slight negligence in his upbringing." Two others, a human and a creature, pulled the young one away from the area, calling him a dumbass the whole way. We sat back down, and it would be a while before tensions fully calmed down, especially since my doll didn't want to let go of me the entire time. Though we were able to set up friendly relations, it wasn't the best of meetings. Before it was all over, I promised to talk to the other group about joining the community to trade with and protect each other. Being that our farm was the furthest from the center, it was a good deal for us. As a sign of good faith, they gave us 2 packets of pumpkin and cucumber seeds. We gave them 10 jars of preserved fish and some eggs, at least those we could manage to negotiate with. With this, the negotiations were set, and our territories facing the town now extended to the small river that flowed 4 miles away. I was concerned for a while about such a large area until they told me about the wild boar that was prevalent in the area, and fresh bacon sure sounded good. We watched them leave into the woodline. A few stood watch for a while, but I couldn't. I had to get this girl inside and calm down before I could do anything. Once she was inside, I had to assure her that no one was going to take her away. Being joined by my other doll helped a lot, but it still took at least 10 minutes to get her to just let go of me. They both wanted to stay, but I still had work to do. That night, I made sure I fully scrubbed up before supper. Afterwards, I took the night off from patrol and spent it with my ladies, just to comfort them, and myself a little. I had to take special care with one that had freaked out earlier, but having the other 4 with us kept her calm. The next morning, they were sleeping it off, and I was wishing I had a normal sleep pattern. Getting through the morning chores, and even getting through breakfast, was a chore. Though, given how much better I felt in other respects, made me just think, worth it. I knew it was worth it to the ladies, since I didn't see any of them up and about until noon at least. Our felines went out hunting while the rest of us got to our normal chores done. If I had hair on the back of my neck, it would have gone up when I heard a shot in the distance. That was until I realized it was coming from a totally different direction than where they were hunting. It was getting close to winter, which meant that the fowl will be migrating. Although catching them is a trick and a half if you're flying. I learned that I had to get higher than them and dive down onto them, quite literally wringing their neck on the way down. It was a good sign that the number of geese made it impossible to hunt them all. Like the man says, life finds a way. With the leaves falling or changing color, I have to figure it's early mid-October. Oh, it was nice to see the pumpkins turning orange, which means the cool morning was going to get worse. Guess it was time to check in on our old friends. Showing up, it was clear that they were not ready for winter. They all look emaciated, and with the winter coming, they should have much more fat on them. Even the snake woman looks thinner, and that isn't even talking about the lizardish folks' tails looking amazingly thin. This is bad. I gave them a couple of geese that I had caught. The smiles on their faces couldn't get larger if they tried. My worry is that the hunger was going to take over. That would be bad, to say the least. I ended up going back to the farm and letting them know what was going on. A few of us will be heading out tomorrow to go and help them fix up their house and help them stock up for winter. Once we got loaded up with as many provisions we could spare, we headed out. I'm not looking forward to having to walk the whole way there. Oh boy. Thinking about the shack itself, I mean, hell, the outhouse is even falling apart. And the fact that they don't have all that much food, this is going to be a lot of work.